West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy with Chef Justice Putnam. Netrootsradio.com.
Je voudrais du soleil vert, des dentelles et des théères, des photos de bord de mer, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je voudrais de la lumière, comme en Nouvelle-Angleterre. Je veux changer d'atmosphère, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Ma fleur sous la pluie de novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, il est loin, là je tombe. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Je voudrais du Fred Astaire, revoir un latte.
The name of the case is appropriately Donald J. Trump versus United States of America. And that really is what this is. But in that case today, the United States of America turned the tables by filing a motion asking, but really demanding, that the judge in the case reverse her recent ruling. And so for at least the next week or so or more, this case has become the United States of America versus Judge Aileen Mercedes Cannon, who stands accused, in effect, in the Justice Department filing today of committing judicial malpractice in her last ruling in the case, in which she issued an order requiring a so-called special master, to be named later, to review all of the evidence in the case, including classified documents, to decide which of those documents should just be returned to Donald Trump. The documents were all seized by the FBI executing a search warrant at Donald Trump's Florida club, which he has abandoned for the summer season. But before leaving there, he left 100 classified documents there while he was gone, along with 11,000 pages of government documents that belong to the United States of America, not Donald Trump. In court proceedings, it is common for all deadlines to be imposed on the lawyers by the judge in the case. But today, Justice Department lawyers imposed a deadline on the judge in this case. Now, you can watch courtroom proceedings for a very long time and not see lawyers tell a judge, if you don't do what we are telling you to do within a week, we are going over your head. And that's exactly what the Justice Department did today in this extraordinarily powerful filing in federal court in Florida, after first filing a one-sentence statement saying the Justice Department will appeal the judge's order of a special master in the case. The Justice Department immediately followed that up with a demand that Judge Cannon stop her own order right now. The Justice Department asked for a partial stay of the judge's order pending the appeal. A stay simply means a pause until the appeal is complete. The Justice Department's motion says the government seeks a stay to the extent the order, one, enjoins the further review and use for criminal investigative purposes of records bearing classification markings that were recovered pursuant to a court-authorized search warrant, and two, requires the government to disclose those classified records to a special master for review. If the court does not grant a stay by Thursday, September 15th, the government intends to seek relief from the 11th Circuit Court of Appeals. So the Justice Department is saying that they have no problem with the part of the judge's order that requires a special master to examine documents possibly privileged by the attorney-client privilege. But the Justice Department is saying there is absolutely no reason for a special master to ever look at any of the classified records that were seized by that search warrant. The Justice Department is also saying that the judge's order to the FBI to stop its criminal investigation concerning those records is improper and a danger to the United States of America. The judge's order allowed what she called the intelligence community, without quite knowing what the intelligence community is, to conduct its own review of the documents. But at the same time, the judge ordered the FBI to stop any of their investigation involving the documents seized by the search warrant. The Justice Department conducted a kindergarten class on national security in its motions today for the judge, explaining to the judge, quote, the intelligence community's classification review and national security risk assessment are inextricably linked with the criminal investigation. The filing points out that the FBI is part of the intelligence community, which is clearly something that Judge Cannon did not know until today. The Justice Department taught the judge, quote, the connection between the national security and criminal investigative aspects of this matter are grounded in the dual mission of the FBI. That is, the FBI itself is part of the United States intelligence community. And since the 9/11 attacks, the FBI has integrated its intelligence and law enforcement functions when it exercises its national security mission. That elementary education on the FBI's role in national security was explained to the judge in a statement by Alan Kohler Jr., who is the Assistant Director of the Counterintelligence Division of the FBI. Alan Kohler explained to the judge that her order makes it impossible for him to do his job. He said, I am also responsible for the protection of classified national security information and processes within the division, including information in the division possession as a result of investigative efforts. I am responsible for the protection of classified national security and law enforcement sensitive information. The FBI is the only intelligence community element with a full suite of authorities and tools to investigate and recover any improperly retained and stored classified information in the United States. The FBI is critical to the whole of government effort to address any national security risks at issue in this case. The same senior Department of Justice and FBI officials, such as myself, are ultimately responsible for supervising the criminal investigation and for ensuring that the FBI is coordinating appropriately with the rest of the intelligence community on its classification review and assessment. The FBI's Assistant Director of the Counterintelligence Division told the judge irreparable harm to the national security would result from enjoining the further review and use of records bearing classification markings for criminal investigative purposes. There's the FBI's top expert on investigations involving classified material telling the judge that she is right now, tonight, doing irreparable harm to national security because she has already stopped not just the FBI criminal investigation, but she has in effect stopped the intelligence community's review because the intelligence community does not know how to do the review without the FBI, and so they stopped doing the review. The Justice Department's lawyers, in their motion, made an absolutely irrefutable point over and over again. Quote, there is no justification for extending the injunction and special master review to the classified records. The Justice Department's motion made the point again and again that Donald Trump does not own the classified records. The United States government owns those records. The only reason for a special master to examine documents is to consider which documents should simply be handed back to the person who was searched because they don't belong in the investigation. The Justice Department's motion says repeatedly that Donald Trump quote, has no right to the return of classified records which are not his property. Such records clearly belong in government custody and, as a matter of national security, must be fully accessible to the executive branch. The Justice Department's motion did not say, hey, we're talking about nuclear secrets here, because they can't reveal what they know about the information that was seized from Donald Trump. But the judge, in this case, knows that the Washington Post has reported this week that at least one of the top secret documents seized by the FBI with their search warrant was about the nuclear capability of another country, another country's nuclear secrets. The judge knows that Donald Trump took that highly classified information home, where it was never in anything resembling a secure location, and may have been in his desk drawer, where the FBI did find classified information. And remember, after taking that information home to his winter home when he left the presidency in 2021, he left that home for the entire spring and summer and went north to a club in New Jersey, where he actually is this summer too. Donald Trump taking nuclear secrets home after his presidency is bad enough and criminal enough. Donald Trump leaving them in that home after he leaves that home for the season 2 years in a row, and for months on end, 2 years in a row, has no idea what's happening to those documents in those rooms in Florida, unlocked rooms. That is even crazier, and this judge knows that Donald Trump did that, and today the Justice Department told this judge, it's on you. The risk to this country for all of that is now on you. Every delay in this investigation, which is an investigation of possible crimes, but also an investigation to protect the United States of America, every delay from now on is on this judge. That's what the Justice Department said today. The Justice Department told the judge today that what she has done already, quote, could preclude the government from taking necessary remedial steps in light of that review, risking irreparable harm to our national security and intelligence interests. The government will also suffer irreparable harm if it cannot review and use the classified materials as part of its criminal investigation, and if it is forced to disclose classified materials outside the executive branch in circumstances where there would be no valid purpose served by such disclosure. They mean there the disclosure of classified records to the so-called special master who the judge wants in the case, and who has absolutely no authority over classified records. No special master can possibly have any authority over classified material, and could never, ever, under any circumstances, take a classified document out of the pile and hand it back to Donald Trump. This is the story of a Trump-appointed judge doing everything she possibly can to help Donald Trump and advance her judicial career in the Republican world. And as she was told by the Justice Department today, by doing that, she has done everything she possibly can in this case to harm the United States of America.
It is Friday, the 9th of September of 2022, and you are in West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. I am your chef de cuisine, Justice Putnam. Gunner the English Bulldog is our snoozing sous chef, and our daily special is Blue Moon Spirits Fridays, because we are all Nighthawks in the diner of life. Gunner the English Bulldog is a very sad English Bulldog today, and for those of you who may find a need to drown your sorrows, the French 77 here that we have virtually mixed and poured is available for your sorrowful and biting pleasure. And for those of you who may find yourselves, well, silently celebrating, the French 77 is the perfect cocktail for you as well. Indeed. Okay, the news of the Queen's demise has sucked all the air out of the news cycle. But I was thinking of the history of the monarch's 70-year reign. And something jumped out at me, and that is Donald Trump stole top secret nuclear docs. Hundreds of them. Well, at least we know that one is a top secret nuclear document. But hundreds of these, no one can see them. They're so secret that even people can't see them. That's how bad it is that he has them. And apparently he just has them laying about, and when he leaves the place for the season, oh yeah, Russian mobsters, come on in. No problem. Now, let's not kid ourselves. There have been multiple spies arrested at Mar-a-Lago. Or if not actually arrested on the premises. They were there and then they got arrested. So those are just the ones that we caught. Okay. And we're supposed to give this guy a pass. We're just coming after him politically. Look, you want to play ball, buddy? You want to mess around with democracy in America? Well, you're going to get your comeuppance, won't you? And this is it. And that's Steve Bannon. I do like the jokes that it's crazy to charge him for laundering. He's never laundered himself in his lifetime. No, actually he does. He cleans up, but, you know, he's the kind of guy, I think that if he smokes cigars, there's ashes all over his, you know, like where his sweater and his gut protrude out. I shouldn't be saying too much about guts protruding out. Boy, age does things to you, doesn't it? Okay, so Steve Bannon may get some comeuppance. I've heard arguments that this is double jeopardy. First of all, he never went to trial. So you can't really, experience double jeopardy until you've gone to trial. He got pardoned before the trial. Oh, you can't charge him now for a crime in which he was pardoned for? Well, if you knew anything about America, state courts and federal courts are entirely different, and state charges can still be brought, even though there was a federal pardon. All right? Because those were only pardons on the federal charges, not the state. He could petition to get a pardon in that state. But, I don't know. Like I said, he could try. So, Steve Bannon thinks that because he was grifting MAGA supporters, that he can get away with it because, hey, they're rubes. They wanted to be ripped off. They knew what they were getting into. You can't charge me with a crime. I was giving them what they wanted, and that was for them to drain their pockets, their pensions, all their livelihoods, and put it in my pocket so that I can party on yachts and try to buy a big Italian villa for my fascist university I want to run. And, of course, he tried that, and the Italian fascist says, you're not only too fascist for us, Steve Bannon, but you're grifting too, and we already have a bunch of grifters that's called the mafia. And I want to know. I've heard the story that it was the fascists that kicked him out, and he was grifting too. I was kind of wondering if it was because he didn't pay off a little bit of, tribute to the prevailing powers that kind of run the nether regions. Nether regions. Yep. And Bannon said, I'm coming back to the States. I mean, there's a lot more people out here, and they're a lot more stupid, and I can get a lot more money. And he did. So one thing that we need to remember is that his partner in crime on this steal MAGA money under the auspices of building the wall. Let's appeal to people's bigotry and xenophobia, okay, and take their money. All right. And that's their pathway to Christo nationalism too. All right. Anyway, his partner in crime has pled guilty to charges, and so it doesn't bode well for Mr. Stephen Bannon because, sometimes people will turn on their partners because their partners are trying to make them take all of the heat. All right. I just loved Bannon's perp walk, too. When he was brought in to the courthouse there in Manhattan, I believe, there was a heckler that called him scummy. What was it? A scummy con man? Oily. Regardless, it sure sounded like our Kelly Lincoln, who lives near there. So it could have been. She hasn't actually confirmed it, but she hasn't denied it either. So we'll see. Sometimes you don't want to admit it because, there's a backlash from the brown and black shirts that follow that Trumpist regime. And they will sometimes take it upon themselves to exact retribution on those who don't toe the party line. So, okay. But it was wonderful watching him getting perp walked. But I loved his statement that I've only begun to fight. Yeah. Mobster. Grifter. He was the one that did the biosphere thing. And he couldn't last. He himself could not last. All right. I could have told you that. And we did. We did back in the day. Okay. I keep telling people that if you become a billionaire in America, that's God's way of saying you are a fascist. Because most of them turn to the fascist way of, getting a tax break. Is that all they want? No, they become full of themselves too. A lot of businessmen think that by dint of the fact that they became buku rich, that they have the secret of the universe. They have been bestowed with benevolence from God on high. So therefore, they can make judgments about all the rest of us because they've been touched. Yeah, they've been touched, all right. Okay. Well, I like representative democracy. It can get a little messy. We do have 70-some million people who want to goose step to their own Teutonic drummer, but there's more of us than there are of them. And we need to keep reminding ourselves that, even though they pack the courts with corrupt, incompetent Federalist Society judges like this Eileen Cannon. And boy, was she taken to task, huh? Yep. I've heard it also described that they got out the big crayons and butcher block paper to sort of, illustrate what national security is and what she has done. When she was appointed to the bench, she had never written an opinion. She had barely done any kind of work, even at this highfalutin law firm that she was at. Essentially, she was tasked to write, like little pithy web page things, if that. And when she was cited or asked to cite publications when, on the forms that you fill out to become a judge, right, in your confirmation process, she had gone all the way back to, I believe, her undergrad years in college, where she had written for either local newspaper, a small local newspaper, or maybe even the school newspaper, such deep articles like flamenco dancing and its influence upon the region. Well, that's not hard to do. So, but to become a Republican judge, they want you young and part of the Federalist Society because that's where they're trained. That's their farm club. They're told, you do what you're told. And here's what you need to know coming in. And they read Atlas Shrugged, and they read The Fountainhead, and they think it's all true, and they have to make decisions about everybody else, because we're just a bunch of mud people. We don't have any capacity to govern ourselves. We need Daddy and Mommy to tell us what to do. No, thank you. No, thank you. And maybe we're putting too much, hero worship on the office of the president. Do we need to do that? I mean, isn't it sort of substituting for a king or a queen? Isn't that what we were attempting to avoid back in the day? Yes, we were, but then again, we were supposed to have a separation of church and state, and now you have to go through a religious test, which is also put in the Constitution that there should be none. But you go through a religious test now. And then what happens is that you get Federalist Society judges who want to carve out the ACA and say, It's a violation of that pharmacist and that doctor's religious rights to give life-saving medication to people who might be gay. This is AIDS medicine, and I can't give AIDS medicine to people. It's against my religion. Because obviously AIDS is a gay disease, and they don't want gays living. Separation of church and state was meant to prevent exactly that. Exactly that. And now we have religious tests. You can't be a judge until you pass the religious test. You can't be an elected official until you pass the religious test. And it only works because they've gerrymandered the whole map to their benefit. And we can work hard, but we're on a treadmill, and we have to work 4 times as hard. And then when we work 5 times as hard and catch up, they accuse us of cheating. Oh, my God. All right. Every crook thinks that everybody else is as crooked as they are, so that's why they have to be crooks. Well, that's why they're crooks, isn't it? We believe in representative democracy, and we have a little bit of trust in our fellow people. Or at least we might be able to come to some sort of consensus, but that is predicated upon a level of education, wouldn't you say? An ability to have discourse. Well, it's going to take a bit of time to get back to what we had started, because we were certainly not anywhere near having the educated voting public that we need to make this representative democracy work. All right. Enough of the Friday rant. We now shall give you a rundown on what we have in store in the rest of this salon that we call West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Starting off in the Bistro Cafe here, consumer regulators are cracking down on unlawful nursing home debt collections. The Michigan Supreme Court ordered that the voting rights and abortion ballot measures be put to voters in November, and a special prosecutor will investigate whether a Michigan GOP candidate for Attorney General should be criminally charged for breaking into voting machines after the 2020 election. After the break, we move to the chef's table, where the UN Secretary General appealed to the world to help badly flood-hit Pakistan. And 4 nations bordering Russia will restrict Russian tourists from entering Europe's visa-free zone. All that and more on West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Bon appetit. Near the bottom of our homepage at netrootsradio.com, to the right of the page is the chat room link, and the chat room is monitored by Kelly Lincoln, and we thank Kelly for doing so. Across the page from that chat room link to the left, you'll notice our link to our Patreon page. And yes, please send us money once a month. We need it. We need it to pay our bills. And thank you for being generous and sending us, well, what you might spend on an espresso-type coffee drink, for instance. If you can afford to send those funds to us once a month, it really does help us pay our bills. So thank you for doing so. If you would like to follow Netroots Radio on Twitter, do so at Netroots Radio. Tom takes care of that. Thanks, Tom. Follow me on Twitter at Justice Putnam. I incidentally post the show notes and links diary on Daily Co's 10 minutes before showtime, and you can find that link on my Twitter feed because it's right there. You can also follow the show on Twitter at Cookbook West and pick up podcasts by way of Spreaker, Stitcher, TuneIn, iHeart, YouTube, iTunes, etc., etc., etc. Okay, and you also know that the deep archive of the Netroots Radio Library can be found at the Internet Archive at archive.org. This first offering here in the Bistro Cafe of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy is by Fatima Hussein, out of the Associated Press. Nursing homes and debt collectors are flouting a law that prohibits them from requiring friends and family of care home residents to shoulder the costs of the facilities, according to a federal report issued yesterday, Thursday. The Consumer Financial Protection Bureau said friends and family members have had to declare bankruptcy, had their wages garnished, and their homes repossessed after signing unenforceable contracts called admission agreements with nursing facilities. As a result, they have been held liable as third parties for their loved ones' nursing home stays. Distraught relatives, in sometimes emotional testimony, and lawyers for families told regulators about collectors seeking tens of thousands of dollars, even hundreds of thousands of dollars in unpaid nursing home fees. An increase in complaints led the agency and Department of Health and Human Services Centers for Medicare and Medicaid Services to send a letter to nursing homes and their debt collectors reminding them to follow the law. Rohit Chopra, director of the Consumer Bureau, held a virtual public hearing with advocates, nursing home administrators, and people affected by what they say are unlawful debt collection practices. Anna Anderson, a consumer protection lawyer in New York, said she has seen hundreds of lawsuits filed against friends and family of care home residents that seek reimbursement for facilities' costs. It's not only routine, she said, it's a deeply troubling practice. She said it puts families in a position of having to choose between protecting their family members at nursing facilities or putting themselves in a position of financial ruin. Chris Ferris spoke of how he received a collection letter for thousands of dollars for his mother's nursing home stay. Through tears, he pleaded with Bureau officials on the call to do something to stop creditors from hounding him and others for money that should not be legally owed. I implore you to do something to stop them, he said. This is wrong. The Consumer Bureau said in a statement that, quote, collection of debts from those contracts may violate the Consumer Financial Protection laws, including the Fair Debt Collection Practices Act and its prohibition on false, deceptive, or misleading representations connected to debt collection. And the CDC reports 1.3 million people live in nursing homes. Kim Bellware of the Washington Post brings us this next offering here in the Bistro Cafe of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy Blue Moon Spirits Fridays. The Michigan Supreme Court ordered a proposal enshrining the right to an abortion in the state constitution be added to the November ballot, ending a partisan feud that unexpectedly erupted when a state board refused to approve the question last week. The decision from the state's highest court came after a 4-member Michigan elections board deadlocked over whether to allow the initiative. 2 Republican members, that would be MAGA Republican members on the board of state canvassers, declined to certify the question, which required 3 votes, citing objections to the spacing and readability of the proposal text. In her majority opinion, Michigan Supreme Court Chief Justice Bridget M. McCormick called the actions of the opposing members on the elections board a sad marker of the times. They would disenfranchise millions of Michiganders, not because they believe the many thousands of Michiganders who signed the proposal were confused by it, but because they think they have identified a technicality that allows them to do so. A game of gotcha gone very bad, she wrote. The Reproductive Freedom for All campaign, which led the signature drive behind the ballot question, said its efforts will now move toward turning out voters in November. Joey Capoletti and Sarah Burnett of the Associated Press bring us this final offering here in the Bistro Cafe of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. A special prosecutor in Michigan has been appointed to investigate whether the Republican candidate for Attorney General and others should be criminally charged for their attempts to gain access to voting machines after the 2020 election. The Office of Democratic Attorney General, Dana Nessel, last month asked the Prosecuting Attorneys Coordinating Council, a state agency, to consider charges against 9 people, including Republican Matthew DePerno, her opponent in the November election. Nessel's office cited a potential conflict of interest because of the upcoming election. The executive director of the council yesterday, Thursday, said D.J. Hilson, the prosecuting attorney for Muskegon County, would handle the case. And Hilson, a Democrat, was first elected to office in 2012. A phone call to DePerno's campaign seeking comment was not immediately returned. He has previously said the claims were purely based on political prosecution. The Kalamazoo attorney also said that 90% of the facts that Nessel lays out, that she calls facts in her petition, are either false or I have no knowledge of what she's talking about. DePerno and others named in the Michigan documents are among the people nationwide who are facing legal implications for embracing Trump's lie that the 2020 election was stolen. A Colorado County clerk this week pleaded not guilty to charges she allowed an unauthorized person to break into her county's election system in search of proof of Trump's conspiracy theories. DePerno built his political reputation and snagged an early endorsement from Trump by pushing Trump's unsubstantiated election fraud claims. Trump lost the election in Michigan by some 154,000 votes, an outcome that has been upheld by multiple investigations, including one by the GOP-led state Senate. Well, that brings us to our break, and when we get back from that break, we will go through weather from around the world, and we will finish up with the stories that we have curated for you today. You're listening to West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, and we will be right back.
You are listening to netrootsradio.com.
Please hang up and try again.
From a point at sea to the circles of your mind, a new force is at work for planetary transformation. New radio for a new Earth.
This is Take Two Movie Review. I'm Gabby Nicole. This week, 3,000 Years of Longing is out of the bottle. Based on a short story by A.S. Byatt, George Miller presents a visual delight on the big screen. An ancient genie, referred to as Jinn, is released from his bottle by a lonely scholar, played by Tilda Swinton. Idris Elba, as the Jinn, offers the standard 3 wishes, with the well-known stipulations, but the scholar doesn't trust him. She spends 3/4 of the film listening to his stories over the past 3,000 years out of curiosity and to preserve her best interests. The final quarter of the film is spent following the repercussions of her wishes, which is far less compelling. The visual effects are by far the highlight of this film. Miller's effects team hits the sweet spot where the work is so believable you forget that you're watching the work of a computer program. I would have been satisfied with a film following the pursuits of the Jinn and felt no real connection to Tilda Swinton's character. I left the theater wanting more, and not in a good way. I couldn't help but question if I was supposed to get something more from the film. Swinton and Elba's acting is excellent, as is expected of these renowned actors, but good acting can only take you so far in a film. Without spoilers, the encounters between the two characters reminded me of E.T. Fans of special effects prowess will enjoy this film, as well as those interested in mythology. The plot nods to popular folklore and legends stretching back to King Solomon. The film takes place in modern times, so modern that background characters wear face coverings, presumably to protect against COVID-19, the first film I have seen to do this without making it more central to the plot. 3,000 Years of Longing, while overall a beautiful film for the eyes, left me longing for more in the plot. This has been Take Two Movie Review. I'm Gabby Nicole. Catch up with us at take2moviereview.com and feed us back on our channel on YouTube.
This is Scientific American's 60-Second Science. I'm Christopher Intagliata. When you think of pollinators, what comes to mind? Bees, butterflies, maybe hummingbirds? Well, how about flies?
Flies in general are the second most important group of pollinating insects. So I think that they deserve more credit than they often get.
C. Scott Clem is an insect ecologist at the University of Georgia, and he's been studying a type of fly known as a hoverfly. You may have actually seen them before, masquerading as bees and wasps.
They tend to be yellow and black colored, and they're kind of different from other flies in that regard. They're these little insects that you often find visiting flowers, or sometimes they'll actually land on your skin, seeking the salt on your skin.
By studying isotopes in the insect's legs and wings, Clem and his colleagues have now determined that some of these flies make a remarkable autumn migration. They seem to originate near Ontario, Canada, and then they fly hundreds of miles south to central Illinois. And it's possible that some go even further, thousands of miles perhaps.
They get up in high altitude air currents. They're able to just surf on these winds, basically, and it takes them these vast distances.
The results appear in the journal Ecological Monographs. As for why the flies migrate, well, Clem says they might be pursuing the aphids they eat southward, or maybe they're following the blooms of nectar-rich flowers.
And if they're moving, they could be moving these ecological services across the continent on an annual basis.
The scientists write that the flies could be transporting billions of grains of pollen across the continent, all while working to exterminate pests. So even if hoverflies' bee-like appearance is mere mimicry, the ecological services they provide could very well be the real deal. Thanks for listening. For Scientific American's 60 Second Science, I'm Christopher Intagliata.
I'm probably okay to have one more drink before I drive home. I'm probably okay. I open the window to stay alert. Probably okay. I just popped some gum in my mouth.
Step out of the car, please.
I probably made a mistake.
Probably okay isn't okay when it comes to drinking and driving. If you see a warning sign, stop and call a cab, a car, or a friend. Buzzed driving is drunk driving. A message brought to you by NHTSA and the Ad Council.
This is a message from CDC.
After hurricanes, tornadoes, and floods, standing water and excess moisture help mold grow in your home, garage, and other structures. When you return to a home that has been flooded, know that you're likely to have mold. Mold puts your family's health at risk. If you have mold growing in your home, you should clean it up and fix other water problems, such as leaks in roofs, walls, or plumbing. Keep your children and pets out of affected areas until you've cleaned. Control moisture in your home to prevent mold growth. To remove mold growth from hard surfaces, use commercial products, soap and water, or a bleach solution of no more than 1 cup of household laundry bleach in 1 gallon of water. Follow the manufacturer's instructions. Never mix bleach with ammonia or other household cleaners. It will produce dangerous, toxic fumes. Open windows and doors to provide fresh air.
For more information, visit cdc.gov or call 1-800-CDC-INFO.
Hi, I'm Tom Hartman, and since you're listening to netrootsradio.com, show your progressive side and go to the donate button on the bottom of the homepage. It's progressives like you who power Netroots Radio and keep the progressive message beaming everywhere 24 hours a day. Just go to our donate button at the bottom of netrootsradio.com. Thank you for keeping progressive radio at full power.
Make sure you're registered to vote. Go to rockthevote.org. Vote for Democrats up and down the ticket. This message, a public service from all the fine people of netrootsradio.com.
What is the Speech and Debate Clause, and why should you care? I'm Bill Newman, and this is the Civil Liberties Minute. In November 2020, Senator Lindsey Graham made telephone calls to Georgia Secretary of State Brad Raffensperger, the state official responsible for overseeing elections. State prosecutors now want Senator Graham to testify before the state grand jury that is investigating potential illegalities surrounding the 2020 presidential election in that state. But Senator Graham is claiming in federal court that he can't be required to testify because of the Speech and Debate Clause. The Speech and Debate Clause, part of Article 1, which sets forth the powers of Congress, says that senators and representatives for any speech or debate in the House or the Senate shall not be questioned in any other place. And the Supreme Court has clearly ruled that the Speech and Debate Clause extends to legislative activities that are part of the elected official's job. So, with regard to Senator Graham's case, the federal district court has ruled that the Speech and Debate Clause does shield Senator Graham from having to answer questions that would intrude on his legislative fact-finding. But the court also ruled that the Speech and Debate Clause does not prevent questions that would inquire about potentially pressuring election officials to change the election results and related matters. The case now heads back to the Court of Appeals, where Mr. Graham's brief is due by October 11th. An important decision on the Speech and Debate Clause is forthcoming. The Civil Liberties Minute is made possible by the ACLU because freedom can't protect itself.
I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 1924. 16 striking Filipino sugar workers on the Hawaiian island of Kauai were killed by police. This incident is known as the Pippi Massacre. Filipinos began immigrating to Hawaii to work on the sugar plantations around 1906. By 1924, there were nearly 50,000 Filipino workers. In 1919, Pablo Manlipit organized the Filipino Labor Union and started recruiting Filipino workers from the Hawaiian sugar plantations. The Hawaiian Territorial Legislature passed an anti-picketing law in 1923. Picketers could receive up to 10 years in prison. In 1924, Manliput led an 8-month strike of plantation workers on Kauai. Workers demanded $2 a day in wages and an 8-hour workday. The plantation owners brought in scab labor. They also used armed forces and spies to crush the strike. Plantation owners turned workers out of their homes, and on this day, the police, armed with clubs and guns, came to the union's headquarters. They claimed to be looking for 2 scab laborers they thought were being held prisoner by the union. Filipino strikers were armed only with homemade weapons and knives and a few guns. The Associated Press wrote, 20 persons dead, unnumbered injured lying in hospital. Officers under orders to shoot strikers as they approach. 16 of the dead were strikers, and 4 were police. After the massacre, police arrested 101 male protesters. 60 received 4-year jail sentences. Manliput was sentenced to 10 years. Others claimed he had been framed and that witnesses had been promised $10,000 to lie during the trial. He was then paroled on the condition that he leave Hawaii. 3 months after the massacre, the strike disintegrated. In 2006, the mayor of Hanapippi and Filipino community leaders dedicated a concrete marker honoring the 16 Filipinos who died during the massacre.
Thank you for accompanying us here to the chef's table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy Blue Moon Spirits Fridays. We always begin, whether from around the world, along the banks of the Rogue River in the Rogue River Valley of Southern Oregon, on the west coast of the continental United States of America, where it is currently 54 degrees Fahrenheit, expecting near record high temperatures of 103 to 105. Winds will be light and variable with sunny conditions throughout the day. Clear skies overnight with lows in the low 60s, winds out of the northeast at 5 to 10 miles per hour. And then except for a few afternoon clouds tomorrow, Saturday, mainly sunny with highs around 103 or hotter, and winds will be out of the north-northwest at 5 to 10 miles per hour. Ragweed pollen is rated low here in Rogue River proper. The air quality index for the region is good at 28 parts per million, and the daytime UV index is high at level 6. Oh, I should mention, for some reason, the Weather Underground has taken our COVID dashboard off of the dashboard. So I need to go now to the state to find updated totals of COVID. Maybe everybody thinks it's over, but it is not. Anyway, barometric pressure is rising at 29.77 inches. Visibility is up to 9 miles. And relative humidity is at 65%, expecting to get much drier as the day wears on. I should also add we are under an active red flag warning for wildfires, which means we have our go bag ready if we have to go. Weather from around the world is brought to you by a crowd of crowdsourced weather stations that a crowd crowdsources from around the world. London is 68 degrees and mostly cloudy with a 100% chance of gun salutes. Paris is 65 and cloudy with a thunderstorm advisory that could impact critical electrical infrastructure. Rome is 88 and fair. Kyiv is 61 degrees and cloudy. Kabul is 72 and clear. Hong Kong is 84 and fair. Tokyo is 76 and cloudy. Sydney, Australia is 60 degrees and fair. San Francisco, California is 58 degrees and partly cloudy. And New York is 75 degrees Fahrenheit and sunny. And that is weather from around the world, brought to you by a crowd of crowdsourced weather stations that a crowd crowdsources from around the world. Munir Ahmed of the Associated Press brings us this first amuse-bouche here at the Chef's Table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres said that the world owes impoverished Pakistan massive help in recovering from the summer's devastating floods because the country bears less blame than many other nations for climate change. Months of heavy monsoon rains and flooding have killed 1,391 people and affected 3.3 million in the South Asian nation, while 500,000 people have become homeless. Plane loads of aid from the United States, the United Arab Emirates, and other countries have begun arriving, but Guterres says there's more to be done. Nature, the UN chief said in Islamabad, has attacked Pakistan, which contributes less than 1% of global emissions, according to multiple experts. Nations that are more responsible for climate change should have faced this challenge, said Guterres. We're heading into a disaster. We have waged war on nature, and nature is tracking back and striking back in a devastating way. Today in Pakistan, tomorrow in any of your countries. The UN chief's trip comes less than 2 weeks after Guterres appealed for $160 million in emergency funding to help those affected by the monsoon rains and floods that Pakistan says have caused at least $10 billion in damage. Guterres said other nations contributing to climate change are obligated to reduce emissions and help Pakistan. He assured Pakistan that his voice was entirely at the service of the Pakistani government and the Pakistani people, and that the entire UN system is at the service of Pakistan.
Je te donne ce mon amour pour la vie entière, la promesse de me trouver à tes genoux. Aussitôt que tu m'appelles, rester toujours fidèle, c'est tout, c'est tout. Je te donne tous mes printemps, mes étés de mer, mes automnes quand les feuilles tombent partout. Si ce n'est pas une bonne affaire, je te donne tous mes hivers.
Jan M. Olson of the Associated Press brings us this final amuse-bouche here at the Chef's Table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, Blue Moon Spirits Fridays. 4 European countries that border Russia will take regional steps this month to limit people from Russia from entering Europe's visa-free zone by land because they are increasingly concerned about the substantial and growing influx of Russian citizens. We believe that it is becoming a serious threat to our public security and to the overall shared Schengen area, Estonian Prime Minister Kaja Kallas said yesterday, Thursday. There are people coming with the aim of undermining the security of our countries. Poland and the 3 Baltic countries, Estonia, Latvia, and Lithuania, have agreed on a common regional approach with the political will and firm intention to introduce national temporary measures for Russian citizens holding EU visas. Such measures should take effect in each of the 4 countries by September 19th. We emphasize that this is not an outright entry ban and commonly agreed legitimate exceptions will remain, Callas said, adding exceptions include dissidents, humanitarian cases, family members, and holders of residence permits, among others. Well, that brings us to the end of our broadcast period for the day and the week. But you do know Netroots Radio broadcasts on, and we will meet up here on Monday for River City Hash Mondays. So do stay tuned to Netroots Radio all day, all night, and all weekend for all the breaking news as it breaks. And we will meet up here on Monday, right here in West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Bon appetit.
Je voudrais du soleil vert, des dentelles et des théières, des photos de bord de mer, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je voudrais de la lumière, comme en Nouvelle-Angleterre. Je veux changer d'atmosphère, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Ma fleur sous la pluie de novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, qu'il est loin, là je tombe. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Je voudrais du Fred Astaire, revoir un latte Goël. Je voudrais toujours te plaire dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je veux déjeuner par terre, comme au long de golfe clair, t'embrasser les yeux ouverts dans mon jardin d'hiver. Pluie de novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, il est loin, là je tombe. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Ba-da-da-dum-di-da-dum. 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 Dans mon jardin d'hiver. Ba-da-da-dum-di-da-dum. 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 Dans mon jardin d'hiver. Dans mon jardin d'hiver. Dans mon jardin d'hiver.